You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode number 16.
A podcast about love, color, and identity, and where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Vias.
Has your name ever been mispronounced? That's one of the reasons why a lot of people call me T. In fact, there are several pronunciations to my name. So growing up and then during university, I got the nickname T. And my name has been mispronounced, is shortened. My father's name has been changed when he immigrated from India to the United States. And so I've kind of lived with T all throughout my childhood into university years. And then I entered the workforce, and there it wasn't really kind of appropriate to have a nickname. So then my name frequently got mispronounced. And so then during this time, I started to get irritated with people mispronouncing my name. I'd have to often repeat myself, or I'd have to spell my name many times. And it was sort of an annoying thing until I moved to another country. And I moved there not knowing the language. And immediately I was put into an immersion course for a couple weeks. And the whole goal of the immersion course is to get you to answer basic questions. You know, what's your name? Where do you live? Basically all of the questions you get when you fill out some sort of governmental form. And I was in this course with people from all over the world. And there was this sound in the language. It's a U sound, and it's not the way to pronounce the U sound. It's not in the English language, and it also isn't present in Portuguese and Spanish languages. And the Portuguese, Spanish, and English speakers were put into a room, and we were specifically taught how to make this special U sound in the language. It would be basically all of us sitting around a table just making this ooh sound. And I struggled to make this sound, and it was kind of a problem because a common question that people ask you is where you live, and the town that I was living in at that time had that special U sound, and I couldn't make it. So when somebody would ask me where you live, and I would answer, they would ask, where? And they would ask me, and then the fourth time, they'd be like, oh, you live here. And then they would say it in the proper way. And so this experience was a bit of a rude awakening. I had been judging people for mispronouncing my name, and here I was, I couldn't even pronounce the name of the town that I was living in. And at the same time I was going through this and trying to practice the language and the U sound, I had a memory. I recalled a memory from a conversation between my parents and my mom. One time she teased my dad on how he couldn't make the double L sound in English, so he had a hard time with people's names that were like Philip or Lloyd. He couldn't say them. And I thought about my dad in this time, because he had been living in the U.S., for a while, and he had been working there, and he still struggled to make certain sounds in the English language. And knowing my dad, I know that he didn't want to mispronounce anybody's name. And at that moment, I realized I had been judging a lot of people for mispronouncing my name, and I didn't have a lot of self-compassion for myself in that same situation where I was mispronouncing, names of towns or people's names as well that had the U sound in it. And so when you're kind of busy judging other people, you don't kind of have that space to be compassionate with yourself. And I don't mean that I needed self-compassion because I was doing the best that I could with the language, but even in the moments where I wasn't doing the best with the language, where I wasn't really putting in that practice to get the sound right and push myself a little bit in the language, even having that kind of self-compassion for myself in the moments where, I'm not even trying. So after my experience with the language, I decided to let people mispronounce my name. And I was in another job, and I said, okay, I'm not going to even bother. I'll say my name the way I say it, and then if they say it incorrectly, but as long as I know that they're speaking to me, it doesn't really matter. And I kind of thought about that. Like, what if we just accepted that sometimes people are not going to say your name correctly because maybe the sound doesn't exist in their native language, or maybe they didn't hear you, or they're not even aware of it. Just what if you let it go? And it was kind of a fun thing to do. I felt a little bit freer from saying, no, actually you say my name this way. And I had kind of this moment where I realized it didn't even matter that someone was saying my name incorrectly when we were in the middle of a conversation. It had no bearing on me connecting with that person. And I'll meet people from all over the world, and they'll say their name, but they'll say, oh, you can call me this, and they'll have an easier way to say it, or they would have maybe changed their name to fit in more in the country that we're living in. And I thought, well, why don't we just allow me to mispronounce your name and know that that's your name, if that's the name that they want to go by, if they want to go by their real name and not change it. And sometimes we can get caught up on certain aspects of what it means when somebody mispronounces our name. So sometimes we think, oh, well, maybe they're being disrespectful, or it's disrespectful to mispronounce somebody's name, where that might not even be the case. Or we give a name that might be easier to say to somebody because we're trying to not deal with any sort of uncomfortability. Either we're trying to avoid having the other person who can't pronounce your name properly, avoid their discomfort, or maybe your own discomfort with somebody having to repeat yourself several times or spelling your name several times. And then we're not kind of allowing that discomfort that kind of allows you to grow by allowing somebody to mispronounce your name and practice it. Then it doesn't give them a chance to learn that name, get familiar with a name, and get used to a different sound. Just like I had to practice the U sound in this language in order to become more comfortable in it. And then it may seem like we're making things easier in the moment by changing our name or not allowing for that discomfort, when in actuality it might actually make things a lot harder in the long run. And so then getting hung up on this mispronunciation, does it really matter? Does it really hinder your ability to get to know another person and them getting to know you? So I'm going to wrap it up here, and I'm going to leave you with a quote from William Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet. What's in a name that which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet? I'll check back with you next week.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.